Have you ever found yourself just swimming in this sea of information looking for that one clear signal, that lighthouse, to show you what really matters?
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes.
Well, imagine this.
Mhm.
What if a deep-rooted spiritual tradition, one maybe we don't always fully understand, actually holds some profound keys to navigating our modern mental health challenges?
That's a fascinating angle.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into exactly that, the really interesting intersection of Islam, mental health, and personal identity.
Hmm.
And we've pulled together a lot of material for you, some groundbreaking research from places like the Yaqeen Institute, extensive reviews looking at mental health service use. Quite a collection.
Right, and our mission today is really to try and understand why, despite Islam having this intrinsic emphasis on mental stability, on well-being, many Muslims still tend to underutilize formal mental health services.
Oh, okay.
So we'll explore the science behind religiosity and well-being, look at the cultural hurdles, institutional ones too, and importantly, unpack some practical ways to foster a resilient Muslim identity, an identity that can be a powerful foundation for mental health.
Think of this as your, well, essential guide to understanding a crucial, often overlooked piece of holistic health. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So we all know mental health issues, things like depression, anxiety, they're everywhere globally.
Widespread.
But here's where the research gets really interesting, almost counterintuitive. There seems to be this strong connection for religious individuals.
That's right. When you actually dig into the data, especially around religiosity and depression, it's quite striking.
How so?
Well, a huge number of systematic reviews, like maybe 2 out of every 3 out of over 100 looked at, find this link religiosity correlating with lower depression levels.
Or levels. Okay.
And even more compelling, maybe, are the longitudinal studies. They suggest that if someone is already depressed, religious practice seems to act as a buffer, maybe even helps them recover faster.
Oh, and does this apply specifically within Muslim communities too?
Yeah, although there are fewer studies specifically on Muslim samples compared to, say, Christian ones, many of those that do exist show similar positive results. It really suggests that faith might offer a kind of built-in resilience system.
That's fascinating for depression. What about anxiety? Does the same pattern hold? It often feels quite different from depression.
It does, largely. A big review of observational studies found about half of them linked religiosity to lower anxiety or fear.
Okay, about half.
But what's really noteworthy is when you look at interventions. In randomized control trials, most religious interventions tested for anxiety disorders actually worked pretty well at reducing anxiety.
Better than secular ones sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, or at least equally effective. And specifically for Muslims, a meta-analysis of studies done in the Middle East found an overwhelming link, like 9 out of 10 studies, between religiosity and lower anxiety.
That's significant.
And even our own research at Yaqeen during the COVID-19 pandemic found something similar. Reduced anxiety in Muslims worldwide seemed related to their level of religiosity.
So it's clear the benefits go beyond just, managing symptoms. Our sources, especially from Yaqeen, talk about specific practices within Islam that actively promote positive mental health. Can you walk us through some of those?
Certainly. A really fundamental one is reciting and listening to the Quran. I mean, the text itself says, and we send down in the Quran that which is healing and mercy for the believers. That points to a pretty profound spiritual, maybe even therapeutic effect.
Healing and mercy. Okay. And what about physical activity? Modern science is huge on exercise for mental well-being. Was that idea around in early Islam?
Oh, absolutely. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was known to be in excellent physical shape. He wrestled, he advised things like horseback riding, archery, swimming.
Right.
And this guidance lines up perfectly with modern research showing exercise reduces stress, lessens depressive symptoms, improves mood, energy, sleep, boosts resilience.
So it's like ancient wisdom meeting modern science.
Exactly. It makes you think, maybe if we followed some of these practices more closely today, well, maybe fewer gym memberships needed. But seriously, the alignment is remarkable.
And then there's these 2 concepts you mentioned earlier, muraqabah and tafakkur. They sound intriguing. What are they about?
Muraqabah and Tawakkul, they're basically Islamic forms of deep mindfulness and contemplation, being profoundly aware of Allah.
Mindfulness and contemplation.
Yeah, rooted in sayings like, be mindful of Allah and He will protect you. It's not just like modern mindfulness, though. It's spiritually integrated, anchoring that presence and reflection and connection with God. It involves self-reflection, observing carefully, contemplating creation, Allah's attributes, all aimed at inner peace.
Okay, so given this clear emphasis in Islam on mental stability and these practices that actively foster well-being, it really does present a puzzle, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Why do Muslim populations, especially in Western countries, tend to underutilize formal mental health services? It feels like a contradiction.
It's definitely a paradox. And it's not simple. Researchers looked at, I think it was over 300 articles.
Wow.
Yeah. And they identified 11 key factors that all kind of interact and contribute to this gap. 11.
11 interacting factors. Okay,
Yeah.
that's complex. Let's try and break that down. Where do we start? What's the biggest piece?
Well, the biggest kind of overarching factor is Islam and Muslim culture itself. How faith and culture shape views on mental health is just profound.
Okay.
And interestingly, Islam actually prioritizes mental stability. It's seen as a prerequisite for things like prayer, marriage, fulfilling religious duties.
So it's foundational.
Exactly, and that's something professionals can actually leverage. Also, Islam historically had this humanist approach, encouraging integration for those with mental health issues, not isolation or institutionalization like you saw elsewhere. That worldview matters.
That's a really important historical context. But then what about specific cultural beliefs around mental illness itself? Do those play a role?
Oh, absolutely. They're a huge factor. Beliefs about supernatural causes things like jinns or the evil eye.
Right.
These can sometimes lead to a negative view of formal biomedical services and maybe an over-reliance on informal traditional resources instead.
So people might seek religious healing first or exclusively?
Sometimes, yes, but it's also important to know that many Muslims hold both explanations, cultural and biomedical, at the same time. So professionals need a holistic approach, one that respects these beliefs, doesn't just dismiss them.
Okay, respect is key. Now, beyond beliefs, what if people just don't know about the services available? How big a barrier is lack of knowledge?
It's massive. Especially for immigrants, there's often limited awareness about what services exist, what different professionals do, what treatments involve.
So they wouldn't know who to see for, say, anxiety versus something more severe.
Exactly. Often help is only sought in really extreme situations, uncontrollable behavior, delusions, things like that. Not necessarily for less disruptive issues like depression or anxiety, which might be seen as something to just endure.
That points to a real need for education then.
Absolutely. Educational outreach, working with Muslim communities, is critical to bridge that knowledge gap.
And naturally, this lack of knowledge and these cultural beliefs would shape people's attitudes towards seeking help, right?
Precisely. Research shows pretty consistently that Muslims in Western countries often have negative attitudes toward formal mental health services. It stems from those cultural beliefs, lack of knowledge, and also perceived stigma.
Stigma, yeah.
Which means the solution have to involve providing services that aren't just good, but are specifically, spiritually, culturally, contextually sensitive, tailored.
Let's talk more about that stigma. How does it actually play out and stop people from getting help?
Well, perceived social stigma is a huge hurdle. Sometimes the misunderstandings of Islamic beliefs can even contribute to it, leading people to feel isolated, ashamed.
So they hide the problem.
Exactly. They might hide it, which prevents them seeking formal care. And when mental health is stigmatized in the wider community, it just reinforces that isolation.
Okay. What about a person's own belief in their ability to actually get help? Their self-efficacy.
Right. That's what the research calls perceived behavioral control, or PBC, is basically, do I feel like I can actually manage to seek out and use these services?
Even if I want to.
Even if you're willing, yeah.
Yeah.
If Muslims don't trust the services or doubt they'll be understood or helped effectively, their PBC is low. They might feel unable to navigate the system, even if they recognize a need. It pushes them away.
Then you have the more practical system-level issues, institutional barriers. What does that look like?
That's about the lack of appropriate, culturally competent services on the ground.
Like not having the right facilities.
Yeah, practical things matter. Having a place to pray, having restrooms suitable for ablution, wudu, having professionals who actually know something about Islam and aren't going to misunderstand religious practices. Without those things, it just reinforces negative attitudes and keeps utilization low. Services need to be actively engaged with the community to build that trust and make sure they're truly inclusive.
Okay. And while traditional resources, prayer, Quran, family support are important, can relying only on them become a barrier too?
They absolutely can. It's great that people turn to prayer, Quran, family, friends. even dietary changes sometimes.
Mm.
These are valuable.
Sure.
But if that's all they do, especially for more severe issues, it might not be enough. And without collaboration with formal services, relying solely on traditional methods might actually prevent someone from getting necessary clinical help. We need holistic approaches that integrate both.
Integrate both.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, you mentioned intention, Naya, as being really central in Islam, but maybe understudied here. How does intention fit in?
Niyyah is huge in Islam. The intention behind an action is often considered as important, or even more important than the action itself. It precedes the action and carries spiritual weight.
So how can professionals use that?
Well, they can strategically use this concept. Maybe encourage someone to simply imagine seeking help, or to consciously formulate a meaningful intention to do so, even if they aren't ready to act immediately.
Just forming the intention has a value.
In Islam, yes. A sincere intention is spiritually rewarded. So framing that initial step, even just the internal commitment as a positive, spiritually meaningful act, can be a really powerful motivator. It can shift things internally before any external action happens.
That's a really nuanced point. Now, while these are community-wide challenges, the sources suggest we need to look even closer at the experiences of Muslim women, right? Where culture, religion, societal pressures create unique hurdles.
Definitely. Focusing on Muslim women requires looking at that intersectionality. Take infertility, for instance.
Okay.
In many Muslim cultures, there's a strong expectation for women to have children. Sometimes a woman's self-worth gets really tied up in that. So infertility can be absolutely devastating. It raises deep questions about identity, purpose, especially in more collectivistic cultures where family and community are so central.
That sounds like immense emotional pressure. And what about after childbirth? Postpartum depression, PPD, is that a big issue?
It really is. Prevalence rates for PPD among Middle Eastern and Arabic women can be quite high, sometimes ranging from 10% up to over 50% in some studies.
Wow, 50%. That's huge.
It is. And for immigrant women, factors like increased social isolation, being far from home, lacking that traditional family support system, like losing the traditional 40-day postpartum rest period where the family rallies around,
Yeah.
that can make them much more vulnerable.
You mentioned cultural interpretations earlier, like belief in jinn. Does that come up specifically around PPD?
Yes, it can. Some believe jinn, or spirits, can cause distress, especially during vulnerable times like childbirth and the postnatal period.
Okay.
And what's really crucial for healthcare providers is to realize that the descriptions people give of jinn possession can sound very similar to the symptoms of PPD.
So providers need to be sensitive to that overlap.
Exactly. Respect the belief, understand its cultural meaning, but still offer the standard psychiatric care. And maybe even involve religious leaders in the treatment plan sometimes to provide that truly integrated, culturally sensitive support.
And just practical things in a clinical setting, like modesty and privacy, those must be significant considerations too.
Huge. Things like refusing to wear standard hospital gowns because of modesty, especially for women who wear hijab. A strong preference for female doctors or therapists. Sometimes a husband might answer questions for his wife, which might seem like shyness, but could be cultural dynamics at play. Providers just have to be aware and sensitive, ask clarifying questions respectfully, and accommodate where possible.
Okay. In Ramadan, the fasting month, that must create specific challenges around medication?
Absolutely. Fasting means no food, drink, or oral meds during daylight hours. That directly impacts medication schedules for things that need to be taken multiple times a day or with food.
So adherence can drop.
It can if it's not managed proactively. Schedules need adjusting, maybe shifting doses to the evening. Also, the increased focus on prayer during Ramadan. Sometimes, if staff aren't aware, they might misinterpret intense devotion as mania or psychosis.
Oh, wow. Leading to misdiagnosis.
It can happen. So healthcare settings need to be aware, adjust meds, maybe provide halal food options if someone is admitted, just to avoid these issues and support adherence.
And then there's a really painful external barrier. Discrimination, Islamophobia. You mentioned a case, ZB.
Yes, ZB's story is a stark example. An 18-year-old Sudanese female facing intense bullying and Islamophobia based on her race, religion, appearance.
That's awful.
It led to severe social isolation, her grades plummeted, huge emotional distress. Discrimination like that poisons the well. It damages trust between patients and providers, makes Muslim women reluctant to even seek care because they fear judgment or misunderstanding.
So what's the solution there?
It really highlights the urgent need for diversity training for healthcare staff, actively working to dispel myths about Islam, and building bridges through collaboration with community leaders like imams to improve access and foster trust.
Okay, so we've explored the issues, the barriers, the specific challenges. To really grasp why Muslims approach mental health services the way they do, our sources point to a couple of key theoretical frameworks.
Right? Models that help organize all these factors. The main ones discussed are the theory of planned behavior, TPB, often linked with the theory of reasoned action, TRA, and the social ecological model, or SM.
Okay, let's start with TPB-TRA. What's the gist of that?
Think of TPB as trying to predict voluntary behavior. It says our intention to do something is the main driver, and that intention is shaped by three things. Our attitude towards the behavior, do I think it's good or bad? Subjective norms, what do important people in my life think I should do? And perceived behavioral control, do I think I can actually do it?
Attitude, norms, control, influencing intention.
Exactly. And intention then leads to behavior. It's especially useful for behaviors where conscious intention is key, which, as we discussed, aligns well with the concept of niyyah in Islam.
Got it. And the social ecological model, SEM, how does that broaden the picture?
SEM takes a much wider lens. It says our behavior isn't just about individual factors, it's shaped by multiple layers of influence in our environment.
Layers, like what?
It usually outlines 5 levels. There's the microsystem, the individual, and their immediate settings like family, school. Then the mesosystem, how those immediate settings connect. The exosystem, external settings that indirectly affect the person, like a parent's workplace. The macrosystem, the broader culture, laws, societal values. And the chronosystem, the influence of time and historical events like, say, 9/11 or a pandemic.
And they all interact.
Critically, yes.
Yeah.
SEM emphasizes that these levels are all interconnected and influence each other. A change at one level ripples through the others.
So why is putting these two models together, TPB for the individual, SM for the context, so important for understanding Muslim mental health specifically?
Because it gives you a much more complete picture. TPB helps understand the individual's decision-making process, their intentions, and perceived barriers. But SEM places that individual within their real-world context, the family pressures, community norms, institutional barriers, societal discrimination, political climate, all that stuff.
So it avoids just focusing on the individual's choices.
Exactly. It helps avoid victim blaming by showing how these broader systemic and environmental factors heavily influence whether someone even feels able to form the intention to seek help, let alone act on it. It's a more holistic and frankly more accurate view.
Now, like any model, TPB has faced some criticism, right? Being maybe too rational, not accounting enough for emotions.
It has. Critics have said it's overly focused on rational thought, doesn't fully capture impulsive or emotional behavior. Maybe other factors predict behavior better sometimes. And there's the classic intention-behavior gap. People intend to do things but don't follow through.
And how does the theory's proponent respond to that?
Well, Iman, who developed it, argues the theory is empirical, it's adaptable. He points out that while the diagrams look linear, the theory does account for feedback loops. Behavior can influence beliefs too. He acknowledges external factors can widen the intention-behavior gap, but maintains the theory's core value is in explaining and predicting behavior by identifying the underlying beliefs about the behavior's outcomes, about what others expect, about control.
So it's still useful for designing interventions.
Very much so. Because if you can identify which specific beliefs are hindering intention or behavior, is it a negative attitude, perceived pressure, lack of confidence, you can target interventions to shift those specific beliefs. It provides a clear framework.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've looked at the challenges, the frameworks for understanding them. Let's shift gears now to something really constructive and empowering. Practical strategies for raising resilient Muslim youth. Building that strong identity we talked about earlier. What's the foundation for that?
The foundation, according to the Yaqeen Institute's work, is that a healthy, stable identity, specifically a positive Islamic identity, is the absolute cornerstone for emotional, mental, and spiritual resilience in kids.
A cornerstone. Okay.
It forms this core layer in what they call their Islamically integrated resiliency model.
And they break down how parents can build this identity into 3 main pillars, right? Starting with self-esteem. How does Islam approach self-esteem, and how can parents nurture it?
Right, self-esteem is that subjective sense of worth. Islamically, it's about teaching kids that true honor, true value comes from Allah, not just from worldly achievements or what others think.
So it's rooted differently.
Exactly. Practically, this involves things like being really mindful with labeling. Avoid definitive "you are lazy" or "you are naughty." Instead, maybe use positive Quranic terms like believer Omin, and talk about the virtues that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And try to separate the child from the mistake, like Prophet Joseph did when he attributed his brother's actions to Satan's influence, not their inherent nature. You can even reframe traits. Stubborn could become persistent or determined.
That leads into focusing on strengths then, rather than just flaws.
Absolutely. A strengths-based approach is key.
Yeah.
Actively notice and verbalize their strengths and try to link them to qualities Allah loves. Wow, you shared your snack. That was so generous. Allah loves those who are generous.
Making that connection explicit.
Yes. And help kids identify their own strengths. Ask them questions like, what are you really proud of doing? Or what do you feel you're good at?
Mm-hmm.
And really make an effort to catch them doing things right, not just jumping on mistakes. Think of the Prophet's kindness to Anas ibn Malik, his young servant, never harsh criticism, or how he gently guided the young man wanting to commit adultery, appealing to his empathy rather than shaming him.
That focus on the positive must really build them up. What about conveying that they're important, that they matter?
Crucial. Show them they are valued by you and, more importantly, by Allah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said a believer's sanctity is greater to Allah than the Kaaba itself. Imagine conveying that level of worth.
Why?
Show genuine interest in their world, their joys, like the Prophet asking about Anas's little brother's pet sparrow. Make space for their opinions and discussions, even if they're young, like Umar did with Ibn Abbas. And really invest in that magic ratio. Psychologists talk about aiming for at least 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative correction. It builds that deep sense of belonging and value.
Okay, that's self-esteem. The second pillar is self-efficacy, competence. What does that mean Islamically, and how does it fuel resilience?
Self-efficacy is that core belief. I can do this. I can handle challenges. I can achieve my goals. It's a can-do attitude.
Right.
Islamically, it connects beautifully to the concept of tawakkul, trust in Allah, but specifically the active part. Tie your camel, then trust in Allah.
Yeah.
You do your part, exert effort, use the means Allah has given you.
So it's not passive waiting.
Not at all. It's about believing Allah provides the tools and that striving, even if it's hard, brings reward. It
Yeah.
also includes what's called proxy efficacy. Trusting Allah can make things happen even beyond your own apparent ability. Think of Prophet Moses at the Red Sea. Absolutely not. My Lord is with me. He will guide me. That's profound self-efficacy rooted in faith.
Powerful example. So practically, how do parents cultivate that tie your camel mindset in their kids?
Give them opportunities for mastery. Set challenges that are just a little bit beyond their current reach. Maybe a tricky Lego set, or setting a goal to learn a new surah for prayer. Celebrate the effort, the perseverance, not just whether they succeeded perfectly.
Focus on the trying.
Exactly. And normalize mistakes. Frame them as learning opportunities, even as a path back to Allah through repentance. Tawbah. The Prophet said, all children of Adam commit sins, and the best of those who commit sins are those who repent. Model this yourself. Talk about your own mistakes and how you learn from them.
Okay.
And use vicarious modeling. Tell stories, your own struggles and triumphs, especially the stories of the prophets. Prophet Muhammad's resilience in Mecca, Prophet Joseph choosing prison over sin. These stories powerfully illustrate how a strong Islamic identity fuels the capacity to overcome immense challenges.
That makes sense. And the third pillar, self-trust or autonomy. What's the Islamic take on that?
Self-trust here means believing in your ability to act according to your own values and best interests. In an Islamic context, Islam itself provides the touchstone, the stable standard for those values in a world that's always changing. Supporting a child's autonomy is actually key to helping them internalize religious beliefs, making it their own, not just something imposed. But crucially, this self-trust needs to be rooted in trust in Allah. Without that grounding, it can just become arrogance or ego, nafs. Always remind them to thank Allah for their abilities.
So how do parents nurture this kind of grounded self-trust? How do they help kids make the faith truly their own?
Encourage an independent relationship with Allah. Worship shouldn't just be about pleasing parents. It should stem from personal conviction, love, understanding. Offer diverse ways for them to connect. Maybe they connect through community service, reading, nature, spiritual gatherings. Find what resonates with them.
Let them find their own path to connection.
Yes. And allow age-appropriate decision-making. Encourage them to think things through, reflect, ponder, just like the Quran constantly encourages tafakkur, reflection. This builds their capacity for making wise choices later on.
And especially for kids maybe growing up as a minority, that idea of positive distinctiveness seems really important.
Absolutely vital. Help them embrace being different in a positive way. Remember the hadith. Islam began strange and it will return to being strange, so blessed are the strangers. Frame living Islamically not as weird, but as special, honorable.
Okay.
Share stories of people who held on to their values despite pressure. Nurture their unique talents and show them how those gifts can be used in ways pleasing to Allah, appreciating creation while hiking, showing good character in sports. Think of Zayd ibn Thabit, whose talent for languages was recognized and nurtured for the whole community's benefit.
Connect talents to faith.
Exactly. And finally, nurture positive social circles. Emphasize belonging, shared values. The Prophet's saying is so potent. A man is upon the religion of his best friend. Help kids choose friends wisely, friends who support their identity and encourage good.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive framework for building resilience.
It really is. Very practical.
So we've certainly taken a deep dive today, haven't we, into this really complex world of Muslim mental health and identity. We've seen the powerful impact faith can have on well-being, but also uncovered those complex interacting barriers to getting formal care.
Yeah, the paradox we started with.
Exactly. And then we explored these really actionable strategies for nurturing resilience, specifically by fostering a strong, positive Islamic identity in young people.
And it's worth remembering that journey of fostering well-being, building that strong sense of self, it's lifelong. It applies to adults just as much as kids.
That's a great point. Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listeners. What if applying just one insight from our discussion today? Maybe it's about reframing a challenge you're facing, or consciously focusing on your strength, or maybe working on fostering a more independent personal relationship with your faith. What if that one small shift could unlock a deeper sense of purpose, of resilience in your own life?
That's powerful to consider.
We invite you to think about how this deep dive might shift your perspective. Not just on Muslim mental health, but perhaps on that universal human quest we're all on the search for peace, belonging, and meaning.